Drops released a lot of boards over the years, many of which were pretty hit or miss. So how's the newest board, the CSTM80, compare? Does it continue the legacy of meh boards that Drop's been doing? So fully built, it's $150. Here's a little stock sound test, but stick around till the end to hear the board with different keycaps and switches. So the top case in the plate is polycarbonate by default, and the switches are Gateron yellow KS-3 Pro Switches. There's also the option when buying the pre-built version to get it with brown switches, specifically Gateron brown switches. I personally prefer the yellow Gateron switches, but it's up to you, obviously. It has a typing angle of 6 degrees, which I think is pretty comfortable. I personally like lower angled boards, so around 5 or 6 degrees. I have liked keyboards that have a higher typing angle, like the Tofu 65. That being said, I do prefer to have a lower typing angle, but if you prefer to have a higher typing angle, something like the Tofu 65, which I believe is a 7 degree typing angle, or something like Novel Keys keyboard, which I believe they're all around 8 degrees, which is pretty high, not for me. I still like their quality and stuff like that, they're just not personally for me, because of how high the typing angle is. This board also is gasket mounted. That being said, it's pretty stiff. Not as stiff as something like the GMMK Pro, which basically has no bounce at all, but it's definitely not as bouncy as something like Keychron's Q2 or Q1. The fully built model comes with keycaps that are cherry profile ABS plastic, and they're shine through. They're shine through the side though, instead of the top, so some people might really like that, some people might not. I personally think it looks pretty cool. It's like laser etched. But the reason they use these types of keycaps is because of the fact that the PCB has south-facing switches, which is a huge pro for a lot of people. This makes it so there's no switch interference if you use cherry keycaps. Switch interference is when the keycap hits the switch and rubs against it, making the typing feel significantly worse, and that only happens if the PCB is north-facing. But this is south-facing, and most enthusiast-level boards are also south-facing. The drawback of south-facing switch sockets, though, is that the most shine-through keycaps don't look nearly as good, which is why it's on the side of the keycap instead of on top. The PCB also does support 5-pin switches instead of just 3-pin, and it's VIA compatible, but that being said, when I did try to customize it using the VIA software, it didn't show up, so I don't know if you need to do the thing with the JSON file. They didn't make it as easily as other people have, but I used Dropzone software, and I didn't have any issues using that to change stuff like the lightings. And for the stabilizers, they're actually pretty solid for the price. I was actually pleasantly surprised that there's no rattle and only the spacebar ticks a little bit, but it's not too bad. So here's a little stabilizer sound test for you. Now, this board's got a little bit of a magic trick that it can pull off. You can pull off the top decorative top plate and swap it out easily with any other of the options. It uses magnets, which I know have been growing in popularity recently. I know the Neo keyboards specifically use magnetic top cases. And for this keyboard, the plastic options for the top cases are only $25 to $35, but the metal options are significantly more pricey at $60, and then some go to $80, and then there's one that I believe is even $100 when not on sale. While the Neo's magnetic top case seemed like it's there to make modding and building it easier, the CSTM80 seems to have a magnetic top case for style points mostly, when you want to easily change up the style and design of your board. Now, when you take the decorative top case off, so while it's naked, it looks like this. Here's the Overgrow decorative case. It has a fairy tale kind of book vibe to it. I'm a huge fan of it, but if you want to, there's also solid color options, and by default, it comes with a solid black. There's also carbon fiber options for the decorative top case alongside the aluminum options if you were interested in that. I really love the aluminum chroma decorative case that they just released, and I really want to pick one up eventually. I think it looks awesome, and it would probably look great with some neon keycaps like GMK Laser. On my own board, though, I swapped the black top case out for the Overgrow case and changed the keycaps for the Elvish set that's an MT3 profile, and I swapped most of the Gateron yellow switches with Wuque POM Linear Switches and some Gateron smoothies. Both switches, the Wuque and the Gateron smoothies, are all POM, so the switches, the top part, and the bottom part of the switch are all made of POM, and they're super smooth. You may be wondering why I left some Gateron yellows, and that's because I only bought a handful of Wuque POM switches, and the Gateron smoothies here are just there to fill some of the spots for my most used key. Magic. Now, do I think this board is worth the price? For $150 fully built, this board may be a little pricey, but I think if you can grab it for $130 and under, it's probably worth the buy. Also, if you prefer a smaller board, there's the CSTM65%, which is basically the same board, it's just, tiny. You can also buy a bare bones version of the board that comes without switches, keycaps, or a top case, or stabilizers, and it's $100 when it's not on sale, and frequently drops below that at like $80. I personally would have liked to see this version come with stabilizers though, because dealing with stabs are often a pain, and most if not all barebone keyboards that I've ever seen or have gotten have come with stabilizers in the box or pre-installed, so it's odd it doesn't come with them at all. But if you have some extra stabilizers lying around, along with some extra switches and keycaps, the barebones version of this board would be pretty cheap. And the fully built version, if you can grab it on sale, I think would even be a worthy buy if you can get it a little bit cheaper than the MSRP, even if you want to just use it stock, because it sounds pretty good stock. I'd really like to know your thoughts down in the comments, and if you liked the video, please leave a like, and if you want to see more in the future, please subscribe. Here's the sound test for the board after I change the switches and the keycaps, and please listen to the end, because YouTube likes that more.